Hola todos, how we doing? Welcome to Chapter 5, Social Community. This is the first of the 4 zones we're going to walk through in depth. Probably also the one that makes the most sense. Social community here, and again, these are not all mutually exclusive. Social community really is about the sharing, the socializing, the back and forth. This is probably what we tend to think of the most when we talk about social media. Is social community. This is really where all the social networks that we know of, the big popular sites are. Okay, we already did this nodes and relationships in the last chapter. This is not a very good map. I'm going to skip it. Diffusions of innovation. I'm trying to remember why this is in the chapter, but regardless of why it's in the chapter, the diffusions of innovation is a theory by Everett Rogers. And if you want something to adopt quicker, you should understand these 4 principles. Now, adopt means use, okay, in business terms, not adopting like a little child. Adoption means you purchase and use, okay? And to be honest with you, these 4 things, 1, 2, 3, 4, are very straightforward. They seem to make sense. And it's absolutely amazing how so many firms screw this up. Where if they just ask these 4 questions to themselves, they probably wouldn't make a lot of new product, innovation, development, shooting themselves in the foot errors, you know. Translation, these are very nugget worthy. So if I leave Seton Hall and I'm working for a company and I need something to be adopted, i.e. used quicker, faster, what should I ask myself? Is there a clear superior advantage over the new product versus what's already in existence? If there isn't a clear superior advantage, then it's not going to be adopted very quickly. Observability and tryability. If you see lots of other people using this new product or service, if it's easy for people to try this new product or service, then guess what? It's going to diffuse, it's going to be adopted quicker. Compatibility. How compatible is the new product or service versus the existing? The more compatible it is, that you don't have to really change your behavior all that much, the easier it will be to adopt. And is it simple and straightforward? If it's too complex, a lot of people won't look into it. So let's take a look at some products here. Let's say the Kindle. Relative advantage, it has multiple advantages over a traditional book. Observability, we see lots of people using these on the beach. It's pretty easy to go and find a store where you can try it. It's not very compatible with what you've done in the past, but it is very simple. It is very straightforward. It's easy to put the books on it. It's not hard to set up, so it was widely adopted. Let's look at Apple Watch. There are some advantages to an Apple Watch versus a traditional watch. There's some. Observability. We don't see that many people using it yet. That's a problem. It's relatively easy to try as long as you go into an Apple store. It is compatible, very compatible with what you did in the past. They actually call it a watch, even though the watch part of it is only 10% of what it does. It needs to be easier to use. It's not all that simple. It's okay. So adoption has not been gangbusters, although it is starting to pick up quite a bit. So if we talk about this area of the 4 zones, we tend to talk about audience and specialization, social objects, and decentralization. So let's take a look at all these. So audience specialization is, whether you have an internal or an external social network, is the method of communication and collaboration more dynamic and interactive for more internal? Is there some kind of a sponsor? Hold on one second. Okay, sorry about that. Had to let little kids get off the bus into the front of the house. Engagement. Engagement is the popular vernacular, it's actually definitionally the correct word. And we've been talking about this all semester in terms of two-way. And that's what engagement is. If you have two-way, you have engagement, because traditional top-down media was all one-way and the audience was completely passive. But if you have an engaged audience and they are providing feedback, comments, you name it, you have two-way, and by definition, you have engagement. I like the word dialogue. To me, the word dialogue is a better word than engagement. But you'll hear this word engagement. It's very consultancy, buzzy word at the moment. You'll see the word engagement in job ads. Let's put it that way. Characteristics of social fans. So they are emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically engaged. They self-identify, like I am a Snapchat user. I love LinkedIn. I love this particular community. There is that self-identification. There is consumption or purchases beyond or use beyond this particular community. And also production means they are contributing or adding to the community. Okay, in terms of being a brand manager, in terms of you leaving Seton Hall and having to do some of this stuff. So these would be marketing or brand manager applications. We need to talk about social presence, earned, paid, and owned media. Owned is not there, but we're going to talk about it in a minute. So brands being part of the dialogue, being part of the community, being part of the social fabric. It could be the case that a brand is the community in itself. I started goofing around this is a blog, it is a community, and it is centered around the Prius vehicle itself. And Prius plugin, Prius 4, Prius C, wiki, media, questions. This is the one that comes up on Google the most, or the highest ranking when you look for Prius communities. I don't find it very user-friendly. I don't find the information all that great. It's not, I don't know. I gotta find a better Prius community, let's put it that way. But sometimes the community is the brand. Sometimes a brand needs to be part of the community, either through paid or earned media. Okay, we're going to talk about some of that. Some of the questions as a brand manager that you have to, is there some kind of a matchup with what the brand is and its values and the social network site that it's being on? Is there kind of, we have to hammer that. This is all the same things. What stories can bring the brand to life socially or digitally? For instance, we have the nonprofits that we're doing this semester in our class projects. And we can use social tools to help us tell stories to a larger audience very affordably. That's an example from the text. It's an example from the text. Another example from the text. Whether you call this real-time marketing, whether you talk about this as brands and engagement, we all know that a couple years ago the Super Bowl had a blackout. And during this blackout, when there was this 10-minute window where they kind of didn't know what to do on TV, they ran a couple extra commercials. But on social, the 360i agency in Manhattan, they took this opportunity to do what they always do with Oreo. Whatever is socially happening in the world, they insert the brand into the dialogue. Whether it's a holiday, it just so happens there was a blackout, and they just said, well, you can still dunk in the dark. And this is one of those case studies that is now in books. They call it real-time marketing, but really it's a better defined as social presence. Okay. Paid media in social communities. These are ads. Okay? Whether they are banner ads, whether they are sponsorship kind of ads, whether they are native ads, you are paying to be present within that community. Native advertising is just advertising within stream. So let's think about this in terms of television commercials. Television. Well, there's an hour show. There's 14 minutes of commercials. There's, 46 minutes of programming. Right? So a commercial is a break from the programming to talk about an ad. Native advertising happens during the programming. So a perfect example of this is like you're listening to a football game and they say, well, that was the all-state crunch of the game. That's native advertising. If we talked about this, sponsor reads are not really native advertising. But within social media, within social community, it's a lot easier to do native advertising than it is with television programming. There's no way to do it. With sports, you can do it. With award shows, you can do it because the award could be the, what are some of them? Teen awards, the Teen Spirit Awards, whatever. And they actually don't have envelopes that they open up. They're reading all the answers off of a Samsung tablet. And Samsung is one of the biggest sponsors. We can also talk about product placement here. And I don't know if I'd call product placement native advertising, but it's more in the spirit of native advertising versus not. So here we have, in the Web 2.0 world, we have paid media, earned media, and owned media. Right? So paid media are ads, whether they're regular kind of ads in a digital format or native ads in a digital format. You're still paying for the media presence. Earned media is when you have the fans or the community talking about your brand. Or like that Prius chat, that is not a Toyota blog. A bunch of people, 2 or 3 people, created a blog about the Toyota Prius. You could call that earned media. And then there are owned media. And in the past, in the Web 1.0 world and pre-web, owned media was very expensive to do. You might have an annual report. You might have a corporate newsletter. You might mail something out. There are very few owned media examples. Walmart TV, I guess, always existed, and Walmart TV would be an example of owned media. But now in the digital world, we all have our owned media. Our Twitter handle we can call owned media. Our blog, our websites, these are all owned media. Procter & Gamble does a number of communities that would be great fits for their brands. Like they have 1 or 2 mommy blogs, which of course, diapers, mommy blogs, and all the cremitas and all the hair stuff. And, they created media content out there. There's a lot of brands that actually do this, where they create a blog that is a good fit for their brands. Earned, I think we did this. Is the brand ready for a social community? When you leave Seton Hall and you go for your first gig and you're doing social media stuff, is the brand ready for social communities? I think you could really say, regardless if technically is it set up, do we have the channels, yada yada, all that other stuff. Is your brand ready for two-way interaction with the community? If the answer is yes, and you can handle that, then okay, you go forward. There are some brands that can't do it. Government, pharmaceutical. There's little engagement they can do. There's all kinds of legal issues, and banks, for instance, there's only so much they could do. Financial firms, there's only so much that they could do. But if you're a brand and you strategically and philosophically believe that you need to have a two-way interaction with your community, either for, you have to pick a reason, branding purposes, customer service purposes, marketing research purposes, R&D purposes, as long as you have a reason for being, there's a bug, then yes, philosophically. Then you just get yourself ready. You have your social media channel set up. You have well done, sophisticated brand profiles and pages. The rest of that stuff's easy. The philosophy's more important. Okay, I'm good. We'll talk more. Thanks.